My mother's message arrived the night before my housewarming. We'll skip it. Your sister just moved too. No hello, no apology, just cold words glowing against the darkness. I stared at the screen, then smiled to myself, blew out the candles I'd lit for them, and turned the key in the lock of a dinner that would carry on without them. A week later, cameras swept through my new villa for HGTV. That same phone wouldn't stop vibrating, missed calls piling up like restless tides. That episode was just the beginning. But before I tell you what followed, I need to ask, have you ever been quietly erased by your own family? When I was 8, Christmas mornings began with the tap of my mother's heels on the kitchen tiles and the scent of cinnamon filling the air. My little sister Chloe would already be camped beneath the tree, her hair tangled with ribbons, grinning as though the sun itself had chosen her first. Go ahead, sweetheart, Mom would say, handing Chloe a large box wrapped in shining gold. I'd wait for my turn, a smaller package tucked off to the side. Inside, every year, something practical, socks, a notebook, a pen set. You love writing things down, she'd remind me, as though predictability were a present. When I turned 10, Chloe performed at the Spring Festival in a white dress and pink ribbons. The crowd clapped like she'd invented joy. Dad lifted her high and said, "That's my girl." A week later, I came home holding a blue ribbon from the district's science fair. My prize for building a solar-powered car out of scrap wood and foil. I waited for him to see me the same way. "That's nice," he said flatly. "Try not to stay up so late next time." Then he turned back to the television. By 12, I'd learned that silence was safer. When Chloe made the cheer squad, there were balloons, dinners, and brand new sneakers to celebrate. When I got accepted into the state's engineering program, Mom only said, "Don't forget to help Chloe with her English project later." It wasn't cruelty. It was absence, a quiet forgetting that layered over time, like dust, gathering where no one bothers to look. I found my refuge in the old shed behind our house, where the scent of cedar mixed with rust and sawdust. I'd sit on the floor, sanding uneven boards until my arms burned. One summer, I built a small table, crooked legs, rough edges, but it stood. I ran my hand across its surface and thought, "This is mine." It was the first thing I'd ever made that no one else could claim. That table followed me everywhere. When I left for college on a scholarship, I left the family portraits behind, but carried the table up 3 flights of dorm stairs. It became my desk, then my drafting table, then the base for every design I'd ever sketch. Mom liked to say Chloe was the heart of the family. Maybe she was, but I was the framework, the beams that kept everything standing, unseen until they cracked. That was the year I stopped asking for acknowledgement and started creating it instead. The next message came on a Thursday afternoon while I was finalizing delivery notes for the villa. Outside, the sea was restless, the sky torn between silver and blue. My phone buzzed once against the counter. "We'll skip your housewarming. Your sister just moved too." No greeting, no punctuation, just that. For a long moment, I stared at the text. Its reflection shimmered faintly in the window glass. My thumb hovered, then typed 2 words, "That's fine." I hit send and set the phone face down. The kitchen was still, except for the ocean murmuring beyond the glass. The faint scent of cedar oil and paint lingered, remnants of everything I'd built with my own hands. Across the room, the long dining table I'd designed for the occasion caught the last of the light, its smooth surface glowing toward the horizon. 15 chairs, each evenly spaced, no seat at the head, and somewhere inside me, something shifted, not hurt, just finality, the quiet resolve of someone who's done waiting. I walked to the window and touched the cold glass. My reflection merged with the view outside, small, steady, and completely my own. I wasn't angry, just fully awake for the first time in a long while. I switched off my phone and slid it into a drawer beside a folder marked guest list. Then I pulled out my old leather-bound notebook, the one that had followed me since college, and drew a line straight down the middle of a blank page. On the left, I wrote those who always had a seat. On the right, those who never did. The page filled faster than I imagined. Names appearing like echoes I hadn't heard in years. Forgotten cousins. Friends left eating alone at gatherings. My grandmother, who'd been told her voice was too loud for the dining room. I pressed the pen hard with each underline until grooves etched into the paper. When the ink dried, I lifted my gaze toward the sea. The horizon shimmered gold, that narrow border between daylight and nightfall. I shut the notebook softly. This time, I wasn't waiting for an invitation. I was setting the table myself. Sleep never came that night. I stayed in the great room with the windows open, the Pacific wind weaving through the cedar beams. Every creak, every soft rush of air felt like instruction. If they could erase me with a message, I would rebuild the space they'd left hollow, not out of spite, but to create what they never did. Inclusion. At 2 a.m, I spread tracing paper across the dining table and began sketching. A blueprint, not for a building, but for a night. Lines, angles, and light sources arranged with architectural precision. Across the top, in faint pencil, I wrote, "Everyone has a seat." By sunrise, the page was dense with scribbles, guest names, measurements, notes on temperature and lighting, placements for each chair. I planned the layout so no one's back faced the ocean. Equal sightlines, equal light, a floor plan for belonging. When morning broke, I powered up my laptop and started sending messages. Short, unembellished. Dinner this Saturday. My place on the coast. Come hungry. Then I began to call each person from my list. Rachel, my college friend who always arrived at airports, to no one waiting. Eli, my cousin left off the last family reunion invite. Aunt Marianne, who'd been sent to eat in the kitchen during holidays because she talked too much. Their voices carried disbelief at first, then softened into warmth. "You're hosting?" they asked. "It's time," I said. By noon, the villa was alive again. Footsteps echoing across stone floors. Deliveries arriving one after another. The faint scent of salt and polish in the air. I worked with a quiet precision, clipboard in hand, checking items off as if overseeing a construction site. Tablecloths, cream and grey. Place settings 15. Candles, unscented. Plates identical. No pattern that set one above another. At the hardware store, I gathered twine for hanging bulbs, marine-grade clips, and a roll of waterproof fabric. When the clerk asked if I was planning a party, I answered softly. "Something like that." He smiled. Unaware he was handing me the tools, I agreed without hesitation. It simply felt right. The house had been built in quiet. It should be seen the same way. The film crew moved soundlessly, their cameras drifting through the amber light like slow waves. No dialogue, only the ocean's rhythm and the faint clatter of plates being arranged. I stayed focused on my work, tightening screws, straightening chairs, wiping a fine layer of dust from the stone counter. One of the cameramen murmured, "You move like someone who built this place." I didn't respond. He wasn't wrong. By midnight, everything was in place. The great room glowed with a soft, honeyed light. The oak table stretched toward the sea, cloth pressed smooth, silver catching the candlelight, wick still waiting to burn. I stood at one end, the night air cool against my skin. For a brief moment, I saw it as others would. A room balanced in quiet equality. No head of the table, no forced small talk, no subtle competition, only chairs, waiting. I circled the table slowly, brushing my fingertips over each seat. 15 touches, intentional, measured, the same rhythm I used when checking the strength of a beam. Tap, press, move on. My breath echoed faintly against the glass walls. When I reached the last chair, I paused. Outside, the waves broke against the cliffs with more force, as though rehearsing a score for what was about to unfold. I went through my checklist one final time. Guest confirmations, deliveries, payments, every line accounted for. Everything ready. The next evening, headlights began to wind up the hill. Through the glass, I saw silhouettes step from their cars, Rachel's kids sprinting toward the door, Aunt Marianne clutching a pie wrapped in a towel. Their laughter rose above the crash of the surf. Inside, I lit the candles one by one. Flames swayed softly, mirrored in the glass wall, until the horizon itself seemed to flicker with light. The table stood open and even, the air scented with thyme and roasted salmon. When the last guest arrived, I closed the door. Conversation began gently, hesitant at first, then easy and full. I took a seat midway down the table, not at either end. There were no speeches, no toasts, just the steady music of cutlery against plates and voices rediscovering their place. Beyond the terrace, the ocean was a black expanse. Inside, the villa pulsed with quiet life. For the first time, it felt whole, not because my family was absent, but because every chair was finally filled. The HGTV episode aired the following week. I hadn't planned to watch it, but that night the villa was full again. Rachel, Eli, Aunt Marianne, even Grandma. Someone projected the episode onto a white sheet, hung along the terrace. The sea whispering below. The first shot swept up from the cliffs, camera rising toward the house, my house, gold light spilling through glass like liquid sunlight. The narrator's voice blended with the waves. When designer Beverly Hart created her oceanfront villa, she imagined a space where everyone could sit at the same table. Then my own voice, recorded months earlier, filled the night. Calm, even. Fairness isn't decoration. It's structure. No one spoke for several seconds. Only the wind brushed against the railing. Then Rachel exhaled. A sound caught between awe and pride. You said that, she whispered. You actually said that. I smiled faintly, eyes still fixed on the screen. I did. The footage shifted. Drone shots melting into close-ups. My hands aligning silverware. Sunlight slicing through the cedar beams. Margaret stirring chowder in the kitchen. Then the table, its long oak surface, extending toward the horizon. Candles flickering like small, steady heartbeats. When the credits rolled, applause rippled across the terrace. I leaned back, inhaling the salt-heavy air, thinking maybe, finally, it was done. Then my phone began to vibrate. Once, twice, again and again until it didn't stop. The screen lit repeatedly. Mom, Dad, Chloe. I let it ring. Rachel noticed. Aren't you going to answer? She asked. No, I said softly. Not yet. By morning, over 30 missed calls filled my screen, followed by messages. We saw the show. Why didn't you tell us? Everyone's talking about it. Then, you embarrassed us. And finally, call me back. I didn't. Instead, I opened my notebook and checked off the final box on my list. Dinner completed. The table now stood empty, though the candles still carried a faint trace of salt and citrus. At noon, Grandma called. Her voice was gentle but sure. They'll try to rewrite it, she warned. They'll say you misunderstood. I know. Then don't fight it, she replied calmly. Let the truth stay uncovered. It carries more strength that way. An hour later, my phone buzzed again. Mom. This time, I answered and set it on speaker. Her voice filled the same kitchen she and Dad had long ignored. Grandma sat beside me, fingers wrapped around her teacup. Beverly, Mom began, her tone coated with fake warmth. We saw your interview. I think there's been a huge misunderstanding about what I said. They made it seem like we left you out. That's not true at all. Your sister was moving that weekend, and things were chaotic. You know how it gets. Through the glass wall, the ocean shimmered beneath the sun. Restless and bright. You excluded me, Mom. I said evenly. Your words did that. I still have the text. Silence followed. Then came that familiar shift in her voice. The defensive tilt. The rehearsed calm she always used to deflect guilt. You're blowing this out of proportion again. We've always been there for you. We just didn't think you'd want to turn a housewarming into a show. You've always been so private. Grandma's voice cut through, firm and steady. Judy, stop. I've watched you do this her entire life. Always redirecting, always dimming her light. Mother, this isn't the time, Mom snapped. It's exactly the time. Grandma countered softly. Every holiday, every birthday, you built the world around Chloe's comfort and called it fairness. It wasn't. It was favoritism. Mom's breath caught. That's not true. It is, Grandma said, her voice quiet but final. And now everyone's seen it for what it really is. The line went dead still. I could hear my father muttering something in the background about drama and attention. I said nothing. I didn't need to. The silence finally belonged to them. When the call ended, Grandma looked over her cup at me. You didn't need to win, she said. You just needed to stop carrying it. Outside, gulls spun above the cliffs, their cries sharp against the steady rhythm of the waves. The villa stood in open light, its glass walls gleaming with reflections of the horizon. For the first time, justice didn't look like victory. It looked like balance. 2 days later, the house was quiet again. The dining chairs still sat close from the last meal, linen faintly wrinkled, the air touched by salt and lemon. I walked barefoot across the great room, my steps echoing against the glass. Beyond it, the sea had stilled, grey, calm, unconcerned with human noise. My phone rested face down on the counter. I hadn't turned it on since that call. Instead, I opened the terrace doors and let the ocean breeze sweep through, carrying away the heaviness that had lived there for years. I'd spent so long building spaces for other people to belong in. Now I understood. I'd been creating my way toward this stillness all along. That evening, I invited only 3 people, my parents and Chloe. No cameras, no guests, no spectacle, just a small table near the fireplace, the old cedar one from my childhood shed, its surface still etched with faint marks from when I'd sanded it as a girl. I set 4 plates, poured wine, and waited. When they arrived, they looked smaller somehow, framed by the sound of the sea behind them. Mom ran her fingers along the table's edge. It's beautiful, she whispered. Not what I pictured. It's home, I said simply. Dinner passed quietly. The fire crackled. My father murmured a compliment about the meal. Chloe stared down at the wood grain, her voice trembling. I didn't realize it hurt that much, she said softly. I didn't know how to tell you, I answered. No one apologized. No one needed to. The silence between us wasn't battle anymore. It was breathing room. Mom exhaled slowly, her tone unguarded for once. You did well, Bev. Really well. It wasn't redemption. It was acknowledgement, and that was enough. After they left, I stayed beside the fire until the embers dimmed. Outside, the ocean moved with the same rhythm I'd heard my whole life. But now it didn't sound like distance. It sounded like homecoming. I stepped out onto the terrace, the cool night brushing my skin. Below, the sea inhaled and exhaled in endless rhythm. I placed my hand on the cedar table, tracing its worn edges. For years, I'd waited for a seat at their table. Now, I had built my own. If you've ever felt unseen within your own family, this story is yours. Beverly's quiet wasn't weakness. It was intention, structure, control. Sometimes walking away doesn't mean defeat. It means creating again, this time by your own design. If that moment, when she closed the door and chose peace over permission, resonated with you, Share your story below. Every comment, every memory keeps this space real. And if you want more stories where justice whispers through silence, stay tuned. There's always another quiet revenge waiting to be told.